it was funny because you come from a founder of a 20-person company and you think you've done well, and then you join a company like ServiceNow and you go, whatever I had was absolutely nothing. This is unbelievable.
Hello and welcome to the Okta Ventures podcast. In each episode, we take a deep dive into the startup journey of one of our portfolio company founders, featuring an exclusive technical demo. I'm your host, Matt Egan, Director of Technical Strategy here at Okta. In my day job, I work closely with Okta Venture portfolio companies and strategic partners to explore and create unique integrations that add value to our joint customers. This podcast is aimed towards the technical audience who are looking to get a better understanding of the robust and incredible integrations that we're building with founders like 8Flow. Today, I'm speaking with Boaz Hetch, co-founder and CEO of 8Flow. Boaz, serial entrepreneur, but I don't want to do an introduction. I'd actually love to get to know you.
Thanks, Matt. Nice to be here. Thanks, Okta Ventures, for having me. I'm previously an entrepreneur. I started a couple of companies in high school and then in kind of university and basically I've always liked starting companies. I graduated computer science. I worked for Deloitte in London, and then I've been working at different startups and kind of 4 different startups for a long time. In 2013, I started a company that was basically an enterprise mobility platform. It was backed by Microsoft Ventures originally, and a bunch of other kind of investors, and we ended up getting acquired by ServiceNow. And so I spent 5 years running most of the platform with ServiceNow. So mobile, chat, AI chat, all the kind of deflection, all that stuff, employee experience across all the BUs, and a bunch of other things. And I decided to leave because I was like, there's a new market that's going to be around in a couple of years. And just the way corporate processes are and how you optimize what you're building, I was like, this is more strategic and it's going to be longer term. And so I'd rather go start a company instead of staying there. And I loved it. So, it was good.
Great. It's a great background. You talk about whiplash. I can't imagine going from a serial entrepreneur founding multiple companies from the days of high school through to let's go work for ServiceNow. Not the smallest. It's been a few years since they've been a startup. They're pretty big. What was that? What was the shift like? And what did you learn in your experience at ServiceNow that informed what you're doing at 8Flow? Maybe double click on that. I mean, you alluded to like seeing some things, but what at ServiceNow in that experience transitioning from SkyGiraffe, it informed the 8Flow journey.
Yeah. So a lot of things, and I think it's kind of almost like different buckets of things. Being at a company like ServiceNow while it was growing the way it was growing. So I joined in 2017, left in 2022. During that time, I think probably tripled size in terms of people. My team grew from 25, 30 people to 350 people. It was a massive growth. It was funny because you come from a founder of a 20-person company and you think you've done well, and then you join a company like ServiceNow and you go, whatever I had was absolutely nothing. This is unbelievable. You also don't quite appreciate the power of like compounding growth at a company like ServiceNow until you're in there.
Yes.
And the momentum, and just generally the power of a product that really has met what's needed. That was amazing. But then the other side is you also see at scale, what are the limitations of a large company? And I think you do annual planning, you do budgeting, you do whatever it is, but and it takes time for stuff to be able to hit. And for me as a founder, I didn't see myself long-term as an executive at a company. I thought it was an amazing time and I loved it, but I was like, I don't see myself as that. And so at some point I'm like, okay, I'm going to go and do it again.
Let's go solve let's go solve a tactical problem.
I think it's that, but I think it's almost like I enjoy the idea of seeing where it's going to be in 2 years.
Yeah.
And it might not make sense to invest in it at a corporate world, but it makes sense to invest in it at a startup because you're playing the game that you can be underground almost doing it, which is where we are with 8Flow. I'll talk about that kind of in a bit. But the part that I saw most was I had probably 25 different builders at ServiceNow. So I had mobile, chat, NLU, web apps, all builders for different customers to build stuff, which inherently meant that every customer had to define the things they wanted to build. And then when they had to define whatever they were going to build, they had to then design it, deploy it, put it in dev, in sub-prod, in prod. And so all of that process for an enterprise is a complicated and very limited scope. And I was like, why isn't there a more AI-ish, and this is 2021, 22, why isn't there something that can learn instead of having a builder? And I was like, I can't do it here because there's 50 different builders to consolidate. That's not the way it's going to be done. It's going to be done from a completely different direction.
Yep.
I was like, okay, so I have to go leave and do that.
So the experience itself actually informs some of this journey. That's very cool. That's very cool. Kind of under expected. I was thinking maybe there was going to be a more like I experienced this specific technical challenge in attempting to develop, but that sounds like it was a little bit more of in the operations of trying to function at scale where you got to see this new problem.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it's more the customer part, meaning I got to see scale of seeing customers and the real problems they have in the field.
Yep.
Whereas if you're a startup, you have a handful of customers.
Yeah.
Whatever scale you have, you're really dealing with them in a much more strategic way. They've bet on you as a startup. They didn't go for a corporate. And so they're trying to do stuff that's almost like off the beaten path with you because they know that's not what they'll do with a big platform.
Some echo chamber, some confirmation bias, some selection bias, a whole bunch of things that happen there. Cool. Right. I think this is a great period to transition here, and let's start to double down and double click into the 8Flow. Maybe a background of the team, who's playing, and let's talk a little bit more about what 8Flow is solving, maybe a product description at this point.
Sure. Okay, so the team is, we're three co-founders, myself, Josh, Russ, and Yev Golden. The three of us have worked together for the last 10, 11 years. Josh was basically my chief of staff and my right-hand guy for the last 11 years. Yev was a bunch of different roles at SkyGiraffe and ServiceNow. At the end in ServiceNow, he basically ran the back end of the mobile platform. But he was with us at SkyGiraffe, and then kind of the three of us were always going to leave to do something together. It was just a given. While at ServiceNow, we said, look, we're going to go start a company. We left and then went kind of raised some funding. We went to people we know, and so kind of our leaders, Ray Tonsing from Caffeinated, Mike Scarpelli, Dave Schneider from ServiceNow, Avinash Sahai ran partnerships at ServiceNow, and then the founders of Airtable, Nat Friedman, and a bunch of other kind of investors who we either know or kind of met, and my previous investments from my last startup.
Sure. Happy customers.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's fun. It was good.
That's good. And 8Flow, what is the problem? Where are you guys solving? What is 8Flow doing technically? What's the solution? When
we started 8Flow, the premise was that there are lots and lots of enterprise workflows, and in order to identify them so you can build automations, there needs to be a tool that does that, and there aren't really.
Yep.
There are process mining tools, task mining tools. There's lots of stuff that kind of is done for a different reason, but there aren't any tools that look at workflows for the reason of automation. And everyone wants to do automation. And this is 2021, 2022, and everything was about like, hey, how do we deflect? How do we build kind of capabilities and all that? And I was like, that has to be discoverable. And my thinking was the technology for doing the actual automations, web automation and kind of other kind of agentic stuff wasn't around yet. It was starting, but it wasn't really around there. But at some point it will be available. And so my thinking was similar to how Tesla, before self-driving cars are available in terms of technology, they were like, we're going to build cars, we're going to put a bunch of cameras on them, and we're going to sell them. We're going to build a profitable business to sell cars. But the cameras are really our advantage because we have scale to then have every road in the world and understand it. So when you have self-driving capabilities, they have all the data globally to be able to use that. And so I was like, why don't I do the same thing? Why don't we build a pipeline of being able to take enterprise data, take enterprise workflows, map them and identify them when we're betting that in 2-3 years time, when the capability of actually doing the automations are around, we would have that infrastructure to capture the data. And so we're basically building a ways for workflow automation. Meaning you're an enterprise, every company has different systems, different road equivalents or whatever. But even if you had somebody who knew how to drive, they need to know how to get from somewhere to another and they need to know which roads are available and what the right routes are. Every enterprise has their own stack. And the contextual nuance of that per team, per priority per team, so it could be the VIP team is different to the level 1 support or whatever, somebody needs to build that mapping. And so we basically built a crowdsourcing mapping for enterprise workflows.
All right, there's going to be some fun analogies in here. I love the idea of talking about the analogy of a given landscape, the geographical landscape, the unique features that it has, and the challenges that it introduces for things like infrastructure projects. And then, if you take that from a building and a physical and say a city infrastructure, applying those in here. So we'll see. We may riff on that. Okay, you started to talk about a little bit of, at the time, 2 or 3 years ago, who knew that we were going to be sitting here 2 weeks after OpenAI released Operator and Anthropic released computer vision a few months back. How does that affect 8Flow and the automation space in general?
So it's really interesting because we raised money 2 years ago saying that we will not build a foundational model because OpenAI and Anthropic and Google and whoever is going to release them.
Mm-hmm.
And so from my point of view, there's no reason to invest in that. So I feel like today, in hindsight, there are a lot of companies who raised tons of money, burnt a lot of money into building foundation models that are kind of from a market trend are going to trending to zero versus trending upwards. There is value to them, but the value is only going to get lower because it's going to get commoditized and effectively the training is going to get cheaper and cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the corporate data itself is as a closed box. And so we said, we're going to build the pipeline and the infrastructure so we're ready when OpenAI, so we've been in touch with them for the last year. We've been in touch with Claude for the same thing, with Anthropic. Google hasn't launched it yet, but they've announced Marina. All of these things are gonna become possible. Today they're kind of rudimentary, but they're gonna get better. And the assumption is they're gonna get better and better. They're gonna get faster and cheaper. And so what we're saying is, if you're an enterprise and you want to use Operator, let's say I'm a large hospitality chain and I have hotels and I need to now deal with support, and an agent might want to be able to kick off a workflow that says, hey, refund a payment to these 50 customers. You could effectively say refund, in a prompt. It would open up 50 windows and it would do that. The problem is which windows, which systems, what's the flow? Does every agent need to now train that? How do you govern that? How do you know this agent should be doing this? And then when you do it, you now repeat it. Mm-hmm. How do you see what Operator did? Was it successful? Was it not? Which part of it needs to be tweaked? And that is all part of what we've been building. And so we're ready to kind of help customers deploy it. And the other part is, if you're a large enterprise, you have thousands of agents or whatever it is. How do you know which parts to automate? Mm-hmm. The way AI works is fundamentally different to human. You can change it from synchronous to asynchronous. Mm-hmm. You can say, hey, I'm going to do a reset password for a customer. So let's say I'm a customer of Okta. I need to do a reset password for IT. The first step of reset password is I go to ServiceNow. I respond to the end user and say, hey, I'm going to reset your password. I then go into Workday or Active Directory or whatever system is going to be to verify the user is still an employee. Mm-hmm. Once I verify they're an employee as a human agent, I will then go into Okta and do the reset MFA. So those are 3 steps. I've reset the MFA, and the 4th step is I go back and message the user, I've completed the task. So now I've broken it into 4. But each of those are broken into smaller chunks, which is like, I need to do a lookup in Workday to look for the employee. Yep. Once I look it up, I need to see their profile. And then once I've looked them up and confirmed it, I now need to look them up in Okta. All of those little steps need to be mapped out for you to decide which one should be automatable. And then the other part is like, okay, so you have AI. Why wouldn't you just do the verification asynchronously? Why wouldn't you say, I'm going to first of all do verification of 50 users. Mm-hmm. I'm going to have an AI open 50 windows. I do verify. I as a human look at each of them, see they're confirmed. I close all the 50 windows and I do the next step and I say, now reset password for all 50. Yep. Or 20 of them were fine and 31 or whatever the combination is. The next part you would do is you would say, okay, for the verification, why does a human need to do it? Why can't I have an AI take a screenshot in Workday of each one and have another AI read the screenshot and say, yes, they're verified. And therefore I've now automated the flow end to end. Yeah. But to do that, I need to reverse into it. And every company works differently. And so we built that ability to map it all.
Yeah. What's an atomic process, and what does that mean when we start talking about some of these things, man? Acid compliance in a database, but how do we translate that all the way up? All right. A couple different directions to go there. I think I'm going to avoid talking about a credential reset and the rat hole of identity verification. Let's stay away from that one for now. But let's talk about, I think there's an interesting concept in here. Let's touch on, the idea of if I did want to start to leverage something like Operator and use that in an enterprise today, could I? What are the challenges I'm going to face? I think we know some. We've kind of tossed them around. I don't think we have to go all the way to the bottom of the barrel on this one, because I think we know that could be a 2-hour journey or longer, maybe a 4-hour standalone podcast coming soon to a podcast near you. But let's, what are the challenges somebody's going to face just on the Operator side in an enterprise?
So I think in the next couple of weeks they're apparently launching the API, so we'll see what happens. Right now, it's a VM running in Bing on OpenAI's infrastructure, and so they have full remote access to it. There's no way you can use this in enterprise. Full stop. Forget anything else.
You think some data compliance officer somewhere is going to have a balk at that?
I've heard some of them may be more paranoid than others. But just because you know you're paranoid doesn't mean you're not still have to. So it's good.
What could possibly go wrong? All right, so it's a quick no, folks. It's a quick no, folks. There's so many challenges, informed consent, and a number of other things there. It's on the horizon, though. I think that's a cool thing that we can see is like that kind of stuff's on the horizon.
Right, and I think they'll have the API, and then the question is, will it run within your environment? Will it run locally? But the assumption, to me, it's a technology that's evolving. It doesn't matter whether I'm looking at it right now as it is today, or whether I look at it how it will be in 6 months. In the next 6 months, it's going to evolve and get better and make it more usable. Today, okay, I can't use it, but I totally can test. I totally can figure out what it does and what it doesn't do. And the paradigm still stays the same. The way Operator right now works is that you create tasks. So those tasks can actually have URLs associated with them and effectively like a prompt related to it. That's kind of what we have been building for the last 2 years.
Yeah.
The ability to identify a prompt from events that happened. And so if you're an enterprise and you want to adopt it, you would say, okay, I'm going to use 8Flow. I'm going to map out every flow. Once I mapped out every flow, now I can choose which ones I want to allow Operator to do.
Yeah, as the discrete task.
Correct.
Orchestrated by 8Flow.
Coordinated? Correct. I don't know what the right word is.
Yeah, something.
Correct.
Overseen.
Right. And some will be APIs, some will be web. So it's web automation isn't going to stand in a vacuum. It's going to be which agents exist already as kind of a chat agent or as an API agent. And then you're going to have also the actual web automation. But they're going to work together. Like no matter what, we're never going to be the only way you do it.
Yeah.
You do it in conjunction with other things.
Yeah. Coverage, adaptability, being able to reach out and get a number of those things. It'll be interesting to see how this will be an interesting question here, boys. Maybe a throwaway, but for someone hearing about your product for the first time, what problem does it solve?
I think there's a few different things. I think today the value we bring existing customers is that they have no visibility into how people actually resolve cases. You would think they do, they don't. We literally have customers who don't know which agents do what, they don't know which systems they're accessing. There's a bunch of governance aspect that people use us today for at scale across BPOs, across kind of agents where you want to say, okay, this team, how do they resolve a case? How many systems are they accessing per case resolution? How much time they spend per system when they're resolving it? And getting that is incredibly valuable in the journey of saying, how do I automate or how do I optimize? Then there's the aspect of actually analyzing the systems. Which systems are you using? Which ones are you using less? How are you using them? You have 2 systems, you're constantly doing consolidations. How do you know which part to kind of consolidate? What, which values are you getting from one system? Can you do an API call? All sorts of different things that you do that. And then finally, the automations that we do, which are more algorithmic, but they help already with saving time, saving effort, and a bunch of other stuff.
If I'm using a ticketing tool like ServiceNow, I've got all of the, depending on how discreetly I break my work up, various request items and like being able to go in and report and say, oh, this request item, which is indicative of Matt going in and validating the employee exists in Workday as part of his step, takes 35 seconds out of this normal 5-minute transaction. So I should probably start there, because if I can get it down to 5, I've got a 7x return.
That's exactly right.
Are you guys going to be in that space, or is ServiceNow, or is it going to be like get a report out of ServiceNow that says these are the discrete items you should focus, these items are the ones you should focus on first?
Very good question. ServiceNow doesn't have visibility. Salesforce doesn't have Workday. Any of these platforms don't have visibility into other systems.
Yeah.
They have visibility into their own.
Right.
So ServiceNow can tell you how long a service catalog item was looked at and how many times it was used. They have no idea if you, for a service catalog item, you had to go to Workday and spend 5 minutes in Workday or 15 minutes or 20.
Yeah.
And so that is something that we can associate. So we can say a service catalog item, whenever it was used, this is
a representation of this discrete task in the system.
Or to the, not even that, like to the actual time it was used. Meaning if, as a customer, I can identify service catalog item 15 is verified, or whatever, like service catalog item 15 is reset password. It has in it a task that somebody has to verify on the back end. That task, we can see when it started and when it finished, and we can see what happened outside of it.
Yeah.
That's something that today nobody else has.
All right. So you led an organization of 350 plus at ServiceNow working on core AI-driven enterprise workflows. What pain points did you see in traditional workflow automation that made you say, okay, I need to start 8Flow.ai, and what, was there a specific aha moment that triggered that?
I don't know if it was an aha moment. I think it was more of an evolution, at least for me. The thing which I did see was that I did see the spectrum of difference between what AI can do and what people hope it can do, and I think it's very different. And I think even though stuff in it looks impressive, it's still just a black box that made numbers follow each other.
Yep.
It's not thinking, and it's hard to disassociate that from the result. And if you understand that that's how it's making the decision, you can understand that to make it reliable, you have to put guardrails on it. And to make guardrails, you have to have the actual data that's able to be validated. And that I felt at ServiceNow when I was there, where this was pre-ChatGPT was being out and being able to kind of incorporate it in corporate, but you could tell that the data didn't exist, that you didn't have, like, it existed in an unstructured format that you couldn't then use to make it useful. And I was like, okay, I need to leave to make the data useful, because the problem exists, and if we had data, we could solve it. If I can structure the data to solve it, that's going to be valuable. And I like the idea that kind of 2 years down the line, I was proven right, rather than kind of spend time at a corporate where I'll work on stuff, but like it's kind of the stuff that you have to do because it's the stuff that you have to do. Yeah. And I was like, okay, I love it. I love being here, but I want to do something that's more exciting for me.
Get ahead of it. All right, I'm going to shift some of these topics. Let's get into, I'm an identity guy. I can't help it. How'd your partnership, I guess, how does your solution fit into or enhance the identity and access management ecosystem? And we can kind of take that broad scale, and I think that,
So I think at the, so there's a bunch of different worlds where this intersects. I think there's a lot of, on the IT world, which is kind of where I come from, on the support world of IT, I think the identity and everything you said before is incredibly strategic. And I feel like if you can find a secure way to understand workflows and then identify the points at which there's failure, or the points at which there's human interaction that shouldn't be there, or whatever the scenario is, that's very valuable. And then on the, it's funny because I feel like operator and kind of the other web automation players are gonna enforce a scenario where you basically need to authenticate the human in the loop. And effectively, I don't know if you've noticed, but since operators start, basically every website starts doing the Cloudflare or check for human, that there's a human, because that's what's going to happen now, and that's going to go. It's going to basically be a kind of a never-ending cycle.
Yeah, we talked about this yesterday a little bit too, in some of this, the arms race of bot detection, CAPTCHA is the, let's prove now the sentience of the entity that's operating on the other side of this client, and a race to the bottom is what I'm going to call that. Let's shift focus here. I think we might have enough content now, is what I'm being told. Let's shift into our demo that we're going to demo and talk through that.
So think of 8Flow as I said before, it's kind of like the ways for enterprise workflows. So what we're doing is we're mapping every event and everything that somebody does on web applications in order to identify how they do it. So an example would be, I'm in Salesforce, and when I'm in Salesforce, I need to kind of go to a case or whatever. 8Flow looks at the case. 8Flow here is on the bottom right.
Yep.
It can kind of, it's a basic Chrome extension that exists and kind of tracks. And as I track, it's learned that if I want to look at this order, I might go to Shopify to look it up.
Okay.
So now if I click on that, it's going to open Shopify, it's going to find the spot, it's going to paste in it, and it's going to find the order. And when I go into the order, it's then going to actually look at that page, highlight the address, and ask me if I want to go to FedEx. It's also copied past all the data. It's able to basically identify all of the things that it needs to do in order to create a shipping label or whatever it is. But all of that is in the service of capturing the workflow end to end, so you can break it down into a micro workflow. So the agent experience is obviously helpful automations. It's like a co-pilot which can do some stuff synchronously, some stuff in the background asynchronously. And it's going to get more kind of richer and richer. But that's the end user experience. The value at the enterprise end as a corporate is that I can see all the work streams that people do, meaning every case that an agent resolved, I can see across multiple agents. So they resolved one, then continued. If I select a case, I can then see how much time they spent in that case, which pages they went to, which URLs, which systems. So when you resolve a case, you're using one system, two, which actual, where you clicked, where you copied, pasted, and what you said before about like, hey, how can I reduce my handle time? I can identify the time spent within Okta was 5 minutes. How can I reduce that to 3 minutes? How can I reduce that to 2 minutes? What can I automate as part of that workflow?
Fascinating demo, very thought-provoking. It's got me on this. It's got me on this kick. I've been in a space thinking a lot about agentic AI. In fact, previously I thought I came up with the term agentic AI, and then I flew into San Francisco this week and saw agentic AI on every billboard, and I realized that I was not as original as I thought. But I watched that and I wonder, how do you see yourself interacting with, maybe colliding with some of the AI orchestration players that are coming up in the space?
Yeah, so I think there's a few answers to that. We are not an orchestration layer.
Yeah,
we're the ways. Meaning there's a car driving, somebody's driving the car. I'm not that.
That's Waymo.
Waymo in the future, it could be a human, it could be, whatever. But from my point of view, the agent orchestration companies, so you have the ones who are basically kind of ChatGPT wrappers, if you like. And you have the little ones that are kind of, giving you each kind of an almost like an SMB way of like, you have a bunch of agents that you can create, like sort of GPTs, like a marketing or a legal review or whatever you do. And then there's the full platforms like Gleans and kind of the searchers who are kind of doing the same thing. The idea, what they do is effectively they're letting you buy OpenAI, ChatGPT, but for the corporate. So you as a company need the governance of using that in the company. So I want to give my marketing team access to all the marketing collateral so they can use a chatbot in conjunction with that. And in fact, you create agents that can do that. We're not that. What we're saying is, in order to do that, you need to understand what everyone does. And to understand what everyone does, you need to map it all out. Once you do, some of that stuff will be resolved with orchestration. Some will be resolved with just an API call. Some will be resolved with whatever it is. We are not solving that. But to be able to use that at scale, you need to see what we have. And what now people are realizing is that you need that. Like it wasn't obvious before.
I think I'm gonna read something back to you. Let's see how this lands. I think so what those may do is help an individual who has tribal knowledge be more efficient. But what you're going to do is potentially offer these opportunities to capture some of that tribal knowledge and or observed behavior and turn it into a more efficient, distributed behavior.
I think it's right. I think almost tribal knowledge is maybe the wrong. It's you have 10 people, you want them all having access to the same capability. but each of them are doing different things. And so what you want is you want to map out, you might be incredibly good at making presentations. Your colleague might be incredibly good at doing press releases.
Yep.
He might do a great job at creating a prompt for press releases and all of that. And so the bot orchestration companies are going to allow you to create that and then distribute that to other people.
Yep.
What we're saying is there's one stage before where you need to know what is it that people are good at, and what do they know, and how do you now want to create those subcategories.
Yep.
You'll use those tools.
Okay.
We will never be those tools.
Yep.
We will let you understand what to build within them.
Okay.
Right. But think of it more as like not so much traffic jams. It's the roads get consolidated, the routes, whatever. Like in a company, you have Salesforce and you have 2 instances of Salesforce. Now you're consolidating, and so you have one. Yeah. You have Oracle ERP, and now you're moving to whatever, like Coupa.
New infrastructure.
Correct.
Right?
Like
it's the additional lane.
Those are evolving always, and they're always evolving in not in tandem. Like they're doing it constantly, and so. One, we give the data. You're now consolidating 3 CRMs into one. Okay, which one do you need to consolidate? Which fields of each one do you need to consolidate? How do you do that? We give you that data. Do you even need to consolidate into one, or just build a chat? There's that stuff. So it's not one-off. It's really that aspect. And then the root is really the value.
I find Eunice asking on behalf of me and informing this.
Puppeteer.
Okay, that's interesting. As we look at the Waze analogy, I wonder, why would I keep coming back? Do I need Waze the second time I've gone on that route? I've done this 3 or 4 times. Do I need to continue to have an 8Flow in the background or Waze in the background?
That's a really good question, and it's funny that you use, like, when you say, I know the route, do I use Waze again? And the whole funny thing is, like, I use Waze every single drive, even if I know the route, because I want to know the traffic and I want to know if something changed. And so in the enterprise, you have the exact same premise. Like, you've got 2 systems that get consolidated and then they get upgraded. Something gets changed, whatever it is, you need to re-update that constantly. And the other part is the route you take changes according to the contextual requirement that you have in that moment. And so if I'm in the VIP team or the white glove IT support team, my route is different to if I'm the level 1 support team on the phone. The rows are the same, but the route is different. And so I still need that. I still need that routing. And every time it happens, I need to check that right now the route is still the same route rather than change.
Maybe I'm taking the toll road in these conditions.
Right, exactly.
Fair. I like it. Okay. I'd like to get into the demo, but before we jump into that, give us a quick overview. Let's tell us what we're going to jump through in Frame.
Yeah. So think of 8Flow as having kind of 2 parts. One is the observability part, and one is the automation part. What we're going to see is first of all the automation part, because it'll be more clear about like understanding what it is that we give the end user, so all the support agents, all the back office operators or whatever. And then as a result of that, you'll see the dashboard, which gives you the data. Understand that the point of all that data is to then build the workflows, but that's what you see in the demo.
Perfect. Excited. Let's get into it. So, Boaz, can you share any stories that you can share about? Sorry, I need to.
It's recording.
Good.
Yeah.
Recording. Yes.
Any stories that you can share about how your product has made a tangible difference for a customer?
Yeah. So I'll give you one example. We work with a very large IT systems integrator, and we did a case study with them, and kind of we worked with them for doing a pilot, and now we just kind of signed an MSA with them, and basically. The pilot results were they got a 70% reduction in handle time for things like end user credential recovery and other kind of common IT use cases. They got an 86% efficiency gain in terms of how they do stuff, meaning handle time and all sorts of things like that. And basically 9 hours a month basically per agent that was recovered just from kind of efficiency for automations using us.
9 hours per month per agent.
Per agent.
Okay, if your startup were a band, a book or a podcast, advice to live by, things people wouldn't expect, or side projects, hobbies, or things you're passionate about outside of work. I'm an ice plunger.
Oh wow! Okay, that's more hardcore than me.
I daily subject myself.
You do actual ice plunger? Okay.
I have a
an ice bath thing?
Trough in my backyard that is filled with ice that oftentimes I find myself using an axe.
You do you.
Yeah.
It's
Come on over.
It's the reason the reason I work is so I can afford a hotel. Just like I don't want to go camping. It's a similar feeling. It's we we went camping with the kids to pretend that we like it, just in case they would like it, and then they didn't like it, just like my wife and I didn't. But we were close enough in Palo Alto to the Rosewood that I was like, okay, if we need to, we can get in the car and go. That's the plan. So yeah, no, it's not my scene.
That's funny.
I don't know if that's usable.
Buzz, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down, walk us through 8Flow and share what your team has built. For more information about 8Flow, please check out their website, 8Flow.ai. If you're interested in learning more about Okta Ventures, you can find it at okta.com/Okta-Ventures.